สวัสดีค่ะทุกท่านวันนี้เจอกันอีกแล้วนะคะแล้วก็เป็นเรื่องที่ฮอตมากที่เป็นสถานการณ์ปัจจุบันอยู่ในขณะนี้นะคะณเวลานี้ไม่มีใครไม่รู้จักโควิด -19 เด็กเล็กเด็กโตรู้จักกันหมดนะคะเพราะนั้นโควิด -19 หรือโคโรนาไวรัสสำหรับวิดีโอคลิปชุดนี้นะคะก็จะเป็นคำศัพท์ที่เกี่ยวข้องกับเรื่องของโควิด -19 เราไปดูกันเลยค่ะA virus is a microorganism too small to be seen without a microscope that causes infectious disease in animals and humans อันนี้ก็เป็นคำจำกัดความหรือว่า definition ของคำศัพท์คำว่า virus นะคะ Background In December 2019, a new disease was identified in China. On investigation, the disease was caused by a new virus of the coronavirus family and has since been officially named COVID-19. ก็เล่ากันย้อนหลังไปเลยนะคะตั้งแต่ช่วงของเดือนธันวาคมปี 2019 ก็มีเหตุการณ์เรื่องของไวรัสตัวนี้ที่อยู่ในตระกูลของโคโรนาไวรัสนะคะเกิดขึ้นที่ประเทศจีนแล้วก็ได้รับชื่ออย่างเป็นทางการว่าโควิด -19 เรารู้กันอยู่แล้วตรงนี้นะคะ It is believed, subject to further investigation, that COVID-19 originated in a meat and live animal market in the city of Wuhan in the province of Hubei in the country of China. It subsequently spread to other countries and was officially pronounced a pandemic by the World Health Organization (WHO) on the 11th of March 2020. Glossary. Each of the terms listed in alphabetical order has the followings. Number 1. A basic definition. Number 2. An example sentence showing how the term may be used in context. Number 1. Animal-human interface. Animal-human interface as a noun, meaning any point where animals, domestic and wild, and humans meet. For example, animal diseases can potentially pass to humans at any animal-human interface such as a zoo, farm, or animal market. Number 2. Asymptomatic. Asymptomatic as an adjective, meaning showing no symptoms of a particular disease. For example, she had no idea her husband had coronavirus because he was asymptomatic. Number 3. Carrier. Carrier as a noun, meaning a person or animal that transmits a disease to others, whether suffering from it themselves or not. For example, people who are asymptomatic can still be carriers. Number 4. Carry. Carry as a verb, meaning be infected with the disease and able to transmit it to others, whether symptomatic or asymptomatic. For example, some people may carry coronavirus without knowing it. Number 5. Community spread. community spread as a noun, meaning transmission of a disease directly within a community and not by importation from a foreign source. For example, with these many new positive cases, the evidence suggests that we now have community spread right here in our country. Number 6, contact tracing. Contact tracing as a noun, meaning identification or monitoring of people who may have had contact with an infectious person. For example, by insisting on strict contact tracing as soon as someone was potentially infected, they managed to control the spread of the disease. Number 7, contagious. Contagious as an adjective, meaning describing a disease that can pass from person to person, usually by direct contact, describing a person with such a disease. For example, patients who are still contagious are kept in isolation. Number 8, coronavirus. Coronavirus as a noun, meaning any one of a large family of viruses that can cause disease in the breathing and eating systems of humans and animals, respiratory and digestive systems. Coronavirus diseases can range from the relatively harmless common cold to more severe and potentially fatal diseases such as SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. Seen through a microscope, coronaviruses appear circular with spikes like crowns and are named from the Latin for crown, which is corona. Coronaviruses normally originate in animals and usually cannot be passed to humans, but very occasionally a coronavirus mutates and can then be transmitted from animal to human and then from human to human. This is how the SARS epidemic started in the early 2000s. For example, did you know that flu is a coronavirus disease? Number 9, COVID-19. COVID-19 as a noun, meaning official name for the novel coronavirus disease that emerged in China in 2019. COVID-19 equals coronavirus disease 2019. For example, all countries are requested to report any new confirmed cases of COVID-19 within 48 hours. Number 10, diagnose. Diagnose as a verb, meaning identify an illness by examining the symptoms. For example, only a medical professional can properly diagnose the cause of your problem. Number 11, diagnosis. Diagnosis as a noun, meaning identification of an illness by examination of the symptoms. For example, if you're not happy with the doctor's diagnosis, you could always get a second opinion. Number 12, disease. Disease as a noun, meaning illness, sickness, a disorder of the body. For example, polio is one of several serious diseases that have been nearly eradicated. Number 13, droplets. Droplets as a noun, meaning the spray produced when people cough or sneeze, and which can spread diseases like COVID-19. For example, healthcare personnel wear protective clothing to guard against the disease carried in droplets when infected people sneeze or cough. Number 14, epidemic. Epidemic as a noun, meaning occurrence of a particular disease in a large number of people in a particular area, same as outbreak, pandemic. For example, the city was devastated by an epidemic of cholera in the 19th century. Number 15, flatten the curve. Flatten the curve as a verb, meaning change the steep upward curve on a graph of new disease cases to a flatter, shallower upward curve over a longer time period through measures such as social distancing. For example, authorities hope that by introducing social distancing, they will be able to flatten the curve and avoid hospitals being rapidly overwhelmed with new cases. Number 16, herd immunity. Herd immunity as a noun, meaning an indirect protection from a disease resulting from a large percentage of the population gaining immunity either through vaccination or through recovering from the disease. For example, this virus is unlike the seasonal flu because there is currently no vaccine or herd immunity, he said. Number 17, incubation period. Incubation period as a noun, meaning the time from a person's first exposure to a disease to the time when symptoms develop. For example, when they know the incubation period, they will know how long to keep people in quarantine. Number 18, infect. Infect as a verb, meaning affect a human or animal with a disease-causing organism. For example, but can it infect human beings? Number 19, infected. Infected as an adjective, meaning affected with a disease-causing organism. For example, they were able to cure the infected left lung before the infection could spread to the right lung. Number 20, infection. Infection as a noun, meaning process of infecting, state of being infected, infectious disease. For example, breast milk can help protect babies against various infections. Number 21, infectious. Infectious as an adjective, meaning describing a disease that can be transmitted through the environment, describing a human or animal capable of spreading an infection, same as contagious. For example, avoid the dogs as they may still be infectious. Number 22, isolate. Isolate as a verb, meaning keep an infected person away from healthy people. For example, they will isolate anyone suspected of having the disease. Number 23, isolation. Isolation as a noun, meaning separation of infected people from healthy people for various contagious diseases like COVID-19. For example, travelers arriving from the infected area were immediately put in isolation. Number 24, mask. Mask as a noun, meaning a piece of fiber or cloth that fits over the nose and mouth to protect other people from the wearer's germs and or the wearer from germs in the air. For example, the World Health Organization recommends that people should not wear masks unless they may be carrying COVID-19 to protect other people or are caring for anyone suffering from COVID-19 to protect themselves. Number 25, outbreak. Outbreak as a noun, meaning a sudden occurrence of a disease or other unpleasant thing, same as epidemic, pandemic. For example, there was another outbreak of the disease in 1993, but the cause was uncertain. Number 26, pandemic. Pandemic as a noun, meaning occurrence of a particular disease throughout a whole country or the world, same as epidemic, outbreak. For example, just after the First World War, there was a pandemic of flu which killed up to 40 million people worldwide. Number 27, patient zero. Patient zero as a noun, meaning the person identified as the first to become infected with a disease in an outbreak. For example, authorities usually try to determine who patient zero was in any given outbreak, as can help answer important questions about how, when, and why it started. Number 28, personal protective equipment, PPE. Personal protective equipment, PPE, as a noun, meaning special clothing, headgear, goggles, masks, and other garments that shield people from injury or infection. For example, much of the PPE worn by doctors and nurses has to be worn once only and destroyed after use. Number 29, person to person. Person to person as an adjective, meaning describing the spread of a disease from one person to another, typically through touch including shaking hands, kissing, sexual intercourse, etc. For example, in January, an infected American woman returning home from China transmitted the virus to her husband, marking the first known example of person-to-person spread of the virus in the USA. Number 30, quarantine. Quarantine as a noun, meaning isolation and monitoring of people who seem healthy but may have been exposed to an infectious disease to see if they develop symptoms. For example, for centuries, it's been common for ships arriving from infected areas to be kept in quarantine at the docks, originally for 40 days, which is where the term comes from. Number 31, screening. Screening as a noun, meaning testing of people for the presence of a disease. For COVID-19, the first step in screening is usually taking a person's temperature. For example, they now conduct screening for all incoming passengers. Number 32, self-isolate. Self-isolate as a verb, meaning isolate oneself, put oneself in quarantine, away from other people. For example, the Prime Minister's wife was tested positive for COVID-19 and the couple are now self-isolating and working by phone and Skype. Number 33, social distancing. Social distancing as a noun, meaning practice of encouraging people to minimize contact and closeness, whether by banning large or even small groups meetings, football matches, nightclubs, or by maintaining a minimum distance between people, for example, 1 meter or 2 meters. For example, the government has instructed schools to take social distancing measures to slow the spread of the virus. Number 34, superspreader. Superspreader as a noun, meaning person infected with a virus, etc., who transmits or spreads it to an unusually large number of people. For example, one so-called superspreader in South Korea infected at least 37 people at her church with the virus. Number 35, symptomatic. Symptomatic as an adjective, meaning showing symptoms of a particular disease. For example, anyone who is symptomatic is advised to phone a doctor and get tested. Number 36, symptoms. Symptoms as a noun, meaning a physical or mental feature that indicates illness or disease. For example, typical symptoms of COVID-19 are fever, coughing, and shortness of breath. Number 37, test negative, test positive, test negative, test positive is a verb, meaning if you take a test for an infection and you test negative, that means you do not have the infection. If you test positive, that means you have the infection. For example, the president is pleased to announce that he has tested negative for the virus. Number 38, transmission. Transmission as a noun, meaning transfer of a disease from animal to human or from human to human. For example, transmission of many diseases can be direct or indirect. Number 39, transmit. Transmit is a verb, often passive, meaning cause a disease to pass from animal to human or from human to human. For example, many diseases are transmitted through physical contact. Number 40, treat. Treat as a verb, meaning attempt to cure or alleviate an illness or injury through medical care. For example, doctors cannot currently treat COVID-19 directly and instead concentrate on relieving symptoms. Number 41, treatment. Treatment as a noun, meaning medical care given to a patient for an illness or injury. For example, there is currently no specific antiviral treatment for COVID-19, and infected patients receive supportive care to help relieve symptoms. Number 42, vaccine. Vaccine as a noun, meaning a substance used to protect humans and animals from a disease. For example, a vaccine of cholera was invented in 1879. 43, viral. Viral as an adjective, meaning describing something like caused by or relating to a virus or viruses. For example, antibiotics cannot be used to treat viral infections because they don't kill viruses, only bacteria. Number 44, virus. A virus as a noun, meaning a living thing too small to be seen without a microscope that causes infectious disease in animals and humans. For example, like all diseases caused by viruses, the common cold cannot be cured with antibiotics. Number 45, zoonotic. Zoonotic as an adjective, meaning describing a disease that can be transmitted from animals to humans. For example, to protect yourself from zoonotic diseases, it's best to avoid bites and scratches from animals. Okay, it is time to say thank you for watching. เอาละค่ะ เราก็มาจบลงที่สไลด์สุดท้ายที่จะต้องกล่าวขอบคุณในการติดตามนะคะ แล้วก็เอาไว้เจอกันใหม่เร็วๆนี้นะคะ สำหรับวันนี้สวัสดีค่ะ Thanks, goodbye